Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a special meeting of City Council of the City of Pearland for February the 17th, year 2020. Moving in our agenda to staff comments, item number 2. I ask staff to pick it up off of this at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the mayor and council for coming in special for an extra hour here before your JPH tonight. We want to cover in full transparency what we know and what we've learned and what we plan to do regarding to the gap in water billing and collections. I do want to say before Mr. Branson goes through the presentation that I apologize to the council and the community for being here, for even having to talk about this. It's something that's takes away from all the good works. Fully realize that, and apologize for to the community for the inconveniences, the confusions, and everything else that's been associated with this. So we do think that through a lot of work and trying to unwind this, and finding out new information and going through all of it, that we do have a good handle. Thanks to Mr. Branson and the team that's worked many hours on this to come up with an understanding of how we got to this point. We'll want to go through some of the options that we see, and then suggest to you direction ahead going forward, and then go through some of the lessons learned that we've taken on. So again, appreciate your extra time here tonight. I apologize that we have to take your time for this, but here we are, and we're looking to understand and get better and move forward as we go through that. So I ask Mr. Branson to take that on now.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members, citizens of Pearland. I'd like to begin by stating that a change in billing, a change in timing between when water meters were read and the corresponding bill that was sent has led to up to a 59-day delay in the utility bills. That change was intended to stabilize billing volatility. Our initial attempt to address the billing delay exacerbated and complicated the issue, and thereby negatively impacted you, our customers. We created the situation, we're accountable, and we are committed to resolving the matter. And I sincerely apologize for this, the inconvenience that this has caused you. So tonight's presentation is going to go over the following topics. We're going to provide an executive summary that will have a brief overview of the utility billing and collections process. We're going to talk about the background of the issue at hand, how we got behind on that billing delay. We're going to give you an update on the automated billing infrastructure project, the AMI project. We're going to then discuss plan options on how to rectify this matter. After we do that, we're going to go into various policy considerations. We'll talk about some best practices, some possible policy adjustments. After we do that, we'll discuss a recommended path forward, next steps, depending on what ultimately is communicated and we move forward with. We'll have an in-depth communication plan. And then after we go through all of that information, then we'll have a discussion. So if you wouldn't mind, please wait until we get to the end. I think this will answer some of the questions that you have. So currently in Pearland, we have 4 different reading and billing cycles. Those are cycles 11, 12, 13, and 14. And they're divided into different regions of the community. We have on the east, pardon me, it doesn't look like this is working, but from 35 east, that is cycle 11 from 35 to Manville and Max Road, that is cycle 12. Cycle 13 is from Manville over to Highway 288, and everything west of 288 is cycle 14. So we divide our bills and our reads into different cycles, those that I just mentioned to you before. So on an annual basis, what occurred prior to this problem is that the Utility Billing and Public Works Meter Services Division, they would gather together on an annual basis and they would coordinate the read and the bill schedule. and then the meters were read on a weekly basis. If you look over on the right-hand side of this table there, it shows that we would read cycle 11 the first week, 12 the second week, cycle 13 the third week, and cycle 14 the fourth week. And then we would read according to the on the right-hand side. And what we did is those would be in tandem where they would follow one another. We'd have the reads, and then we would bill anywhere from 5 to 15 days afterwards, immediately after those reads. This will become important in just a little bit. So the billing process itself, I think it's important to know how that works. What happens is the consumption, your usage that you have at your house, is collected by our meter readers. They drive by in a vehicle. That vehicle goes by and it automatically collects the information and it's downloaded into that vehicle. Once the entire community is read, they go back to their offices, they download the information. That information sent over to utility billing. Then utility billing, they'll look and see if there's any exceptions. What tends to happen over a period of time, or when these reads take place, some of them, for whatever reason, don't read. So we send out an exception report. The meter readers go back out and then they read them again. They get the meters. Sometimes they literally have to wake them up. And then they take the reads, bring them back in. And then the information is downloaded into the system. Then bills are created, printed, mailed, and posted. Once that's done, the payments go out and then they're processed accordingly. So that's the overall process. The meter readers gather the information, it's downloaded into the system, corrections are made, and then based on the information that is actually pulled from those meters, the bills are calculated based on the rates that have been approved. So now I'd like to talk to you about what got us where we are today. So in 2018, this has been a while, we received numerous complaints about the length of the billing cycle. And what I mean by that is historically, and industry standards are that you read between 28 and 32 days. Well, what was happening was some of those reads were longer than 32 days. And so that means our customers would be receiving possibly a higher tier the longer the read period goes to. So in 2018, we made a conscious decision to go to 28-day reads. And I need to state that that was a decision that was made in order to stabilize and make the billing periods more precise, less volatility. What is important to note is, so we moved up that reading schedule from 28, we moved it up to 28 days, but the billing cycle stayed here. We continue to do that on a month-to-month basis. So every month we read every 28 days, but the actual billing cycle stayed. When we sent out the bills, it was on a monthly basis. So over time, there was a gap between when the meters were read and when the actual bills went out. And if you look up here on the screen, you can see that cycle 11 was 58 days behind, cycle 12, 59, 13, 53, and cycle 14, 58 days. So this was, again, a decision to close the gap on the reads, and we moved to a 28-day cycle, reading cycle. Now, I also need to state that just because we moved to a 28-day reading cycle, you may recall that I mentioned previously that sometimes we have to do rereads. And so all of that information is not downloaded. We may start at 28 days, but by the time all that information is downloaded, it could be 30, 31 days, et cetera. We did dating back to 2018, we did an analysis, and on average, it's 27.957 days over that entire time period. Roughly 28 days is when we were doing the reads. So some of you may have seen on your bill 27 days. You could also see 30 days or 31, but we consciously moved to a 28-day cycle where we started the reading. In most cases, holidays have an effect on that, as well as weather ultimately has an effect on that, being able to do the things that need to be done. So this shows you here on the left side that on our old 28 to 32 day read schedule, and then approximately 10 to 15 days afterwards, you can see that we were anywhere between 5 and maybe a maximum of 18 over there on the left-hand side, but it was typically between 10 and 15 days. Well, when we changed to the 28-day read cycle, billing once per month on that same schedule that we had before, you can see gradually that from the time the meter reads took place to the time we actually billed grew and up to the schedule that I showed you earlier, up to 59 days in arrears. So to exacerbate the problem, we became aware of this particular issue, and we were in the process of coming up with a plan to rectify that, and we ended up inadvertently billing only cycle 11, and we billed them prior to vetting and advertising that 25-day plan or that new schedule. So cycle 11 customers, and again, you may recall that cycle 11 is from 35 east, that entire area north and south of 518. Those individuals received this bill, and on that bill, it had information that was confusing. It had information that was inaccurate. It stated that there was a past due balance when that was actually not the case. So this is an example of one of those bills, and you may or may not be able to read it, but down at the bottom here, it talks about, as I mentioned earlier, that there's a past due balance. There's also 2 different consumption periods on this bill and 2 different amounts that are due. It's very confusing to people who received it, and it shouldn't have occurred. It did. So that's what got us where we are today. Cycle 11 at this point is the one that have received those inaccurate bills, statements that say they owe past due amounts. We haven't billed the other cycles, and that hasn't occurred. This type of issue hasn't occurred with the other remaining cycles at this time. I'm going to pause for just a moment, and I want you to hold on to what I just said. And I want to talk about the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project. Some of you are familiar with that. Some of you may not be. That's the actual meter replacement program where we're putting smart meters in the ground throughout the city. The actual installation of those meters is going very well. The schedule's a little behind. It's a little bit delayed. We have a contractor that's doing that for us in almost all cases, except for there are some that we're doing internally, but it's by contract. And we've changed out over 28,000 meters today. It's important to note that the AMI project is not related to this billing delay at all. Those are 2 complete separate issues. And a majority of those reads, remember we're up to 59 days in arrears, haven't even been billed based on the new meters. I think, and we can talk about this later, but I believe the vast majority of the new meters have gone in December and January, and now through February we'll see. So again, we're delayed billing, so the new meters, the AMI infrastructure is not the issue here. It's the delayed billing. It's also important to note that once fully operational with wireless reads and with the information, the technology that's out there, we'll be able to read, we'll be able to report, we'll be able to bill much easier than the current process that we have. It'll all be automated. So I wanted to make that distinction for everybody here this evening. So now let's shift gears. You know the problem. You know that AMI is not related to the issue. Let's talk about a long-term goals when we're trying to figure out how to fix this problem and what we do when it's all said and done, once the AMI structure's in the ground and we're moving forward and we've solved this problem. We want our goal, and we intend, and there's no doubt that we will have monthly reads on a regular date. We can schedule it in the system to read it on a regular date. We can also have monthly bills on or about the same day regularly once we go to the new system. And then ultimately, we want to stay within the industry standards. Worst case scenario, once we read, then we bill within 10 to 15 days. So that's the long-term end results that we want when this is all said and done. Now, let's talk about plan considerations. When we're thinking about what plan to rectify this problem that we created, we want to look at minimizing the impact on the residents of Pearland. We need to think about the length of time to reduce the amount of funds that are in arrears. So do we want to do it immediately, or do we want to do it over a longer period of time? So that's something to consider. And then also another issue that we need to focus on is the complexity on how we're going to execute the plan. So what I'd like to do right now is go over 3 different plans for your consideration. Option A is the 25-day billing plan that we have published at this particular time. If we're going to do that, we're going to have to tweak what we have out there, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but the 25-day billing catch-up plan. Option B is the 30-to-30 plan. We'll focus on that in a moment. And then option C is bill the full amount plan due based on previous consumption. Let's talk about option A. What option A does is we switch when we issue our bills to 25-day billing cycles. So every 25 days, we bill for water already used and already for the reads that have already taken place. But essentially, every 25 days, we bill. This will have an immediate impact on our residents, and it will create a financial impact for some of our residents. Customers will receive more than one bill in a monthly time period, and we'll kind of illustrate that here in a moment. Based on what's out there right now, the plan that we have advertised, cycle 13 and 14 were to receive 14 payments in a calendar year versus 12, which is the standard. Cycles 11 and 12 would have 15 payments versus 12, which is in a calendar year. That's again when we bill every 25 days. With this plan, one of the things that we would do is during a calendar year, once you receive that 12th bill, after that, the 13th and the 14th bill, you would not have a base rate. It would only be your consumption, not a base rate, because we break it down into base rates over a 12-month calendar year. So there would not be base rates with this particular plan. The next thing that we would do, and we're already doing this with some of our customers, we set them up on a payment plan, and with this particular plan, we would waive any delinquent fees. Once AMI was fully implemented, we would change the read dates to 30 days, which would also help speed up the process. And then with this plan, we would be caught up by early 2021 based on if we implemented this almost immediately. That's plan A, and this illustrates, if you see the shaded area there, this is a little bit of an adjustment to that 25-day plan, utilizing current and future read dates with a slight, remember, we haven't billed the other cycles yet. We only billed 11, so we'd have to adjust that. But what the area in yellow, the highlighted area, shows is that during those months, based on this particular plan, those customers in those different cycles would receive 2 billings per month, or 2 due dates per month, excuse me. So that's a 25-day catch-up plan. The option B, which is the 3230 plan, has minimal impact on the residents of Pearland. What this would do is it would extend the read cycle from 28 to 32 days. So instead of reading every 28 days, we'd read 32 days. So remember earlier, we sped up the read cycle and we kept the monthly bill here. In this particular scenario, what we would do is we would slow down the read cycle and then we would catch up slightly with the billing cycle. Least amount of impact on our residents. The one thing that is a minor issue here, remember the industry standard is 28 to 32 reads. So that's an important bit of information. If we read on a 32-day schedule, what happens is when you read on a 28-day schedule, you have consumption for this period of time. When you read on a 32-day schedule, you have consumption over this period of time. So what could happen during the summer months when you have high consumption, it could potentially push those individuals into a higher tier during those higher months. So that's something to consider with this particular plan. Now, again, industry standard is 28 to 32-day read cycles. On this plan, it would take longer to catch up, but it would have, again, minimal impact on the residents. We would catch up to an acceptable delay by early 2022. This is, you saw the first two parts of the slide earlier. On the left, it's the 2832 read billing schedule. The second is the 28-day read with billing once per month on a monthly basis. Over here on the right-hand side, it shows you what would happen if we went to the 32-day read, the 30-day bill cycle. It would, just like we got out of whack by doing the read cycles earlier over time, it'd get us back with almost little or no impact. This is a representation of all of the read dates, the bill dates, and the due dates. And based on, if we were to start this almost immediately, you can see out of all of those, there's no, other than cycle 12, there's no time period where you get 2 bills in the same month. And based on this representation, in cycle 12, you would have one time period, which is the first of the month you'd get a bill, and then you get another bill on the 30th of the month, or 31st of the month. So if you'll also look at this one closely, if we were to use those dates, there's no bill due date in February. Right after that, we could just slide that down, and then you'd only have one bill date, due date every month during the duration of this particular schedule. So that was 3230, and option C is a bill full amount due plan. This has an immediate impact on the customers. We would bill the customers for unbilled consumption. Again, what we're talking about in all of this is consumption that has already been used. So we bill them at one point to be determined in the future for their unbilled consumption, the amount that we are in arrears. That would obviously be recovered in a shorter period of time, but it would definitely have an impact on individuals that were not expecting this and couldn't afford to pay for that in a lump sum time period. With this payment plan, or with this, we would certainly make available payment plans for those individuals that would want those would want a payment plan, and then delinquent fees would also be waived. I want to mention that there's been some discussion about an amortization plan, and that's a great plan. It's very similar to what we have scheduled here, what we have shown here. You would just pay it out over time. An amortization plan based on the current software that we've had a conversation with our software provider, and as of right now, we don't believe this is a viable option because of all of the issues. And I say this, I mean an amortization plan. The system's not set up for that, and it would be difficult to do. We do currently have a system where we can do payment plans, and so by doing a lump sum payment and then offering payment plans, that would work and is available. So again, here are the options. Option A is 25-day billing catch-up plan. The immediate impact is customers over that time period would receive 2 bills at different times throughout the schedule. Option B is the 3230 plan. It has really little or no economic impact on the customers. They'd still be getting 1 bill a month. It would just take a long time, not a long time, it would take a longer time to catch up, and that would get us back to where we were by early 2022. And then option C is bill the full amount due plan. And of course, that has an immediate impact on individuals that are not able to make that full payment all at once. So the next thing I want to talk about are best practices and then policy adjustments. The American Water Works Association, who's kind of the guide, they have standards that you need to keep reading cycles no more to a maximum of 34 days. The closer you get to that, the more it impacts a customer because it could bump them into higher tiers. That's why the 28 days is a good plan. However, if you divide 28 into 365, that kicks you into 13 billing periods. So that's an issue. The 30 days doesn't do that with a minor adjustment. Ultimately, long range, I mentioned the AWWA standard, and that is that you need to be billing 10 to 15 days after the meter reads. We'll easily be able to do that moving forward. Policy adjustments, Chapter 30 of our ordinance states currently that bills are due 20 days after they're issued. If there was any flavor for wanting to extend out the due dates, we would have to do a temporary adjustment to our ordinance that we currently have. Delinquent fees can be waived. We can do that administratively. That would be easy to implement. And then another consideration, depending on which option we go with, there is the potential that we may have to waive various tier adjustments, especially if we do the lump sum billing. We're going to have to figure that out and determine how to actually do that in regards to the different tiers. So how do we make sure that this doesn't happen in the future? We've already put methods into place, systems into place, but initially, some of the things that we're focusing on is internal cross-functional communication. We do a good job communicating, but we need to make sure that when decisions are made, that everybody understands the full implication of those decisions, and we're doing that. Data-driven decisions, when we make decisions, it needs to be based on data, metrics, analytics, and reports that are shared throughout so people understand the full impact. Update our SOPs. We do have standard operating procedures. They need to be updated. Along with that, cross-training and succession planning. Our staff, they it's important for more than one individual to be the holder of or the expert on a system or a process that we have. And so we need to cross-train and make sure that we have other people in line when people leave our organization so that we can do the things that we need to do. And then long range, once this billing, whatever we ultimately decide, once this matter is corrected, we will need to once again finalize or adjust our meeting reading and billing schedule so that it's that way from this point moving forward. Once a month on a regular date, and then the billing would be at or about the same time on a monthly basis. Based on the plan that we move forward with, we need to determine and finalize that plan. We need to discuss where applicable that we waive delinquent fees and look at payment plans depending on which plan we move forward with. Ultimately, when this is all said and done, we need to have council and town hall city meetings to communicate this throughout the entire community. We need to provide press releases, utility billing information on our webpage, inserts within the bills themselves, customer service line, direct people there where they can get information, of course, our local newspaper, and then all of our social media outlets. That would be our plan moving forward once we agree on a specific option moving forward. So with all of that information in the record, we are open to council staff discussion. I know that the next agenda item has citizen input right now, so.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, again, thank you for your patience and understanding going through this, and we are doing our best to rectify and understand and, as I said earlier, get better. Once you have your questions answered about the process, anything else along those lines, and we get into the path forward, as John stated initially, before I think we fully understood the whole dynamics, we're looking at this 25-day, the plan A. I think now we'd suggest that most of the staff's on the same page about going to plan B, but there's also some rationale for C, so either one of those. But if you ask us for a recommendation, that'd probably be towards the B cycle in catching us up and minimizing the impacts going next. But when you're ready for that piece of it. So, thanks, sir.
Does that complete staff report at this point?
Yes, and then citizens' comments, if that's.
Let me move into the agenda. It's item 3, which is public comments, and like that, council member.
Thank you, Mayor. We have quite a few citizens tonight that want to speak. If some of you want to give your time to another person or you want to designate someone to speak for the group, you can do that. Otherwise, I will call you up in the order of where you appear in the stack I received. The first person, and let me just go ahead and tell you all, so I don't have to keep repeating this. You have 3 minutes. State your name and address when you get up there. I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds. Due to the large number of people that wish to speak tonight, we're going to have to enforce the 3-minute rule. All right, the first person I have is Jessica Reeves.
Hi, my name is Jessica Reeves. I live at 2708 Shakespeare Street. I've gone over, we purchased our house in May 31st, 2018. I have each bill that I've received, and they range from 24 days to 28 days, and then 33 days, 22 days for the billing cycle. Each bill is usually about $99, which isn't too crazy. But then I did receive the $188 bill at the beginning of this month. I pay my bills every month on time, and so I don't understand how I need to be picking up the slack that has been dropped on paying additional amounts. I feel like if I knew the amount that I owed, choice C would be, possible, depending on the amounts. I know we're $6 million behind, but, if I would just need to know that amount. So I wouldn't be opposed to the item C. B is a little better, just so that it's not, a complete impact immediate. But also, I want to get to a positive as soon as possible. So I don't want to be behind for 2 years. I'd rather be behind just for a year. I would like an itemized amount of what I actually used, because my bills start, on 6/8/18, the service period, a month after I purchased. So I figured we were all, on the same page on that. One, you know, uh, I would like to know what is owed essentially for item C. So, yeah.
Thank you. Scott Youngblood?
My name's Scott Youngblood. One of my addresses is 2004 North Main Street in Pearland. Gentlemen, ladies. The one issue I have, actually I have a lot of issues with the water department, but the one I'll stick to tonight is the billing that was just discussed. And I appreciate John's presentation because it actually made what I was wanting to say, I think, more pertinent. The one problem, especially when we're talking about the 28-day cycle, if anybody figures that out, that's 13 months. As he said, that they were billing 12 months cycles. The problem is those of us that only pay the minimum amount are going to pay more. You're actually going to pay more. And when he was talking about option A, you have, I think, 14 or 15 billings. I think that's what he had said. That means that I'm going to have more in a bill than what I consume because of the minimum billing issues that the water department has. And I know he mentioned that there's no base rate, but after 12, I've already paid the base rate. I've never gotten to the consumption. So I end up paying 2-3 times more than I ever will use in this city. And I know that's not the issue for everybody. I know some people actually do go over, have the minimum amount and have a consumption issue, but that's not my problem. I don't do that. I also have property outside of the city, so I'm not here all the time. So I'm always paying the minimum, both my house here and in my office here. So that's the issue I'm having with this whole thing, is I'm going to end up paying more than I would on a regular 12-month billing. I just don't understand why you guys can't read the meter just one day a month and be done with it, just like the electric bill's done. Option B would have less of an impact on what I'm talking about, except for I think one time you mentioned, and I'm not sure how that works out mathematically. I'd have to sit and look at that slide that he had up there again and figure that out. And then option C, the full amount. Again, I'm going to be paying for something I've already paid for because I don't ever reach the minimum amount. So I know for people that go over the consumption amount, it's probably a moot point. For someone like me, I end up paying more than I would have ever paid on a
30 seconds.
So thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Janice Hudson? You don't wish to speak? Okay. Denise Hewitt?
Hi, my name is Denise Hewitt, and can I lay this down? No? Can I lay this down? This cover? Yeah, don't count this against me, okay? Hi, my name is Denise Hewitt. I'm at 3404 Blue Spruce Trail, Pearland 77581. Holy moly macaroni. Did anybody get anything out of that? Yeah, I'd like to study that. Are you going to put that deck out someplace? Yeah, you're going to publish the deck that we just saw, the presentation? I'd like to study that a little bit. So I'm one of the people who were inadvertently billed $130. I got billed $132, and then I got billed $130. Thank you for inadvertently taking $130 of my money. I appreciate that. I'm not quite sure I understand inadvertently, like you pushed the wrong button. How do you inadvertently bill somebody? You got a guy driving in a truck, he picks up an automatic read, he downloads it, you're uploading it, bada bing. Somewhere in there, did you just inadvertently, couldn't have happened on my regular billing, so this is some sort of catch-up thing. So somewhere in there, we've had a human intervention, right? So if I do $130 times 14 billings in my month, because I'm lucky, I'm in 11, that's $1,820. I pay my water bill every month, and I have complained every month about how much my water bill is. And then I went out and I played around in your decks, and I saw that we have this outrageous water bill compared to everybody else, and we can go into statistics and population and everything else that you want to go into, but we have one of the highest water bills in the area. Shame on y'all. Just really shame on y'all. Who can't do math around here? Okay? So you're buying some water, because we were buying from the city of Houston. We buy water, so that's your purchased amount. Minus what you're storing, minus what you build. Don't you reconcile your water? It's a commodity. Do you not have a, I don't know, evaporation, leak percentage, whatever that deviation is? Aren't you reconciling? How can you get this far behind? How does it happen? I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. I'm paying a high bill every month. I'm really insulted by this. Why didn't we see this presentation before you billed me the $130? Where was that? Where was the transparency? It wasn't there. It wasn't there. And unfortunately, Clay, I got to lay that at your feet, right? I mean, how did we change to a 28-day billing cycle? Who did that? Admin? Manager? Where were we in that? How do you just
30 seconds.
How do you just inadvertently change a day, inadvertently bill? I'm really, really challenged to speak kindly about the water department and the city right now. So I guess I'll pay you another $130 for the next 14 months of my life, but I'm going to talk to you every month while I do it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jimmy Davis.
Before we start, let me remind everybody, I was the first person in here, so thanks. It's nice to be called so late. Jimmy Davis, 5004 Combsnell Street. First off, Mr. Branson, you said that y'all looked at an amortization and that wasn't possible. The city's official statement says that for those of us like me in Cycle 12 that's going to pay 15 bills, and you put up payments, John, that hid that I'm paying 2 bills in March, and you hid that Cycle 13's paying 2 bills in April. You hid that. Why are you trying to hide stuff from the people? But you put up there that once you bill me for 12 months of base charges, oh, you're just going to bill me for consumption. So our system can't bill amortization. You can't add a line item on a bill that says you owe us $60 extra. There's 6 months. I'm tacking on a $10 charge. Our system ain't set up for that, but your system's set up that in October, when I've paid you for 12 months of garbage and 12 months of sewer and 12 months of water, that you can suddenly bill me just for consumption. I'm supposed to trust you? Bullcorn. I can't trust you on calculating 28 days times 12 doesn't equal 365. Your new fix, hey, let's go to reading 32 days. I've never seen a month that has 32 days. You say in your presentation to council, the first and most important thing, you had 2 important objectives that any solution must meet. Those 2 objectives were, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm pretty pissed off right now. Those 2 objectives were monthly meter reads and monthly billing. Those are your first 2. You said any solution has to meet that. Has anybody seen a month that has 32 days? I've never seen one, at least not on any calendar I've ever used. And I'm sorry, if you're reading a meter every 32 and billing every 30, eventually you're kind of gonna catch up somewhere. You're not gonna have a bill, as y'all showed, for me, cycle 12, well, I won't have a bill in February 2021. So I guess we don't meet that end result. You say we have to have of a bill every month and a meter read every month. Every plan you've put forward fails. 28 days is not one reading a month. That's 13 readings in a year. 1 month is going to have 2. You failed on your end result. 32-day meter reads is not one read every month. You failed in delivering what you said any solution has to meet.
30 seconds.
It's not hard. There's a 10th day of every month. So you know what? You read the system every 10th day, or the 5th, or the 1st, or the 15th. I don't care. But read it on the same day every month. 10 days later, put out your bill, and I pay you 20 days later. I'm not paying you in October for trash that goes on my curb in December. No. I'm not paying you in March for trash going on my curb in April. No.
Time.
I'm canceling my auto pay. I'll pay y'all what I feel like when I feel like it till you can send me one bill a month.
Thank you, sir. Pete Steik.
Hi, I'm Pete Steik, 2312 South Capri Drive in Pearland. And we've just got some concerns. Most of the people in our neighborhood have gotten 2 bills in February, and we're just finding out about how far behind the city is in their payments, in their collections. And we were wondering what month did all this start, because we've gotten two invoices in February, and including one that said that we hadn't paid and they were going to cut our water off if they didn't get it paid right away. But we've got automatic payment, and other people in the neighborhood are having the same issue. So double billing in a month is because you're behind, but we know nothing about that. So, and the past due notice, we don't understand how that happens since you get our payment every single month. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Joyce Graves or Gabbins? Ms. Gardner?
My name is Joyce Garner. Can you
Just pull it down.
pull it down? And I live at 2316 South Venice Drive, Pearland, 77581. And I also got the information that I was supposed to pay 2 bills this month. And I do automatic paying. And I also got the notice that they were going to turn my water off. And they're taking it out every month. So, that's a problem. So anyway, I went over to the water department. And at first they said I was going to get a second bill this month in the amount of $130 something. And in my ledger right here, I keep really good records. And it goes back to 2010, and I never have found a month that I didn't pay a water bill. And I can show that to you if you need to see it. But anyway, when I went over to the water department, then they decided, no, I don't owe them $130, but in the end of the month, I'd get another bill for $60 something. What I want to know is how many of these I'm going to have to do this way before we catch up or whatever it is we're trying to do. But I do take offense when they're telling me they're going to turn my water off when they're taking the money out every month. So I'm hoping y'all will be able to help us and get this straightened out, because I know they told me another bill would be coming at the end of the month.
Thank you, ma'am. Marion Meckerman?
My name is Marion McKernan. I live at 2321 South Lago Vista Drive. I'm going back in my records and I cannot find a gap of 59 days. Is there some way you can take my address and tell me where this gap is? You do automatic payments, you take the money out every month, and I don't see a gap anyplace. I also agree with that billing cycle. You bill the same day and you read the meter the same day every month. There's no such a thing as a 30-day month, 32-day month, 28-day month. You read it on a monthly basis like everybody else does. So if you're going to read mine on the 1st, the 15th, the 20th, I don't care. But I want only read once a month, and I'll pay that bill once a month. What's the other thing? And it appears that you're taking steps to prevent this. Why was this covered up for so long? Why all of a sudden are we so far behind? Somebody has to be responsible for this, and nobody's taken the blame or the responsibility. It all boils down to it's the leaders that are responsible for what their employees do. They are the final ones, and they should be standing up and apologizing to us for their screw-ups. If they're the leader, they need to lead or move on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Richard Sharp.
Richard Sharp, 2516 Wood Creek Drive, Pearland, Texas, 77581. A few years back, I came in here when you were raising the water rates, and I was one of 5 or 6 people that spoke out against it at a meeting, okay? And I want to let everyone know right now, we're not getting the value for our dollar after you raised our rates, okay? I would expect to see better. Number 2, I'm in the same boat as that other gentleman. I paid a minimum. I live by myself, okay? So I'm going to wind up paying more than I would pay any other time, all right? Not fair, not right. I don't care how many algorithms you run or amortization. Doesn't work out as far as I'm concerned. Number 3, no such thing as inadvertent. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. There's something called an MOC. If you're going to make a move like that and start moving dates around, do a management of change. Trent, you know what that is. Figure it out. Before you make that move, understand what effect that's going to have on everything else in your system before you do that. But you don't make that change unless you identify that and get certain people to sign off on it. People knew what was going on. And when that other billing went out, somebody knew about it and pushed a button on that. It was talked about. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't like somebody woke up and, oh, look, I accidentally. No, it didn't happen like that. All right? So, yeah, somebody's got to be accountable for this. And I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it doesn't work out like that. People need to be accountable, and it doesn't need to happen again. Raise our property taxes 2 years in a row because we expect the same level of service and support. We're paying this extra money on this water bill, and again, we're not getting value for our dollar. So start giving us what we pay for. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. That's all we have, Mayor.
John, complete cycle.
Pleasure.
Okay. Moving in our agenda, item 5, which is purpose of the meeting.
So, Mayor, I think it'd be appropriate for council questions on, their presentation in the background, just on the facts and how we got here. And then if we want to get into then thoughts, some suggestions on going forward, that'd be appropriate. But maybe want to do a round robin there with your colleagues here, sir.
Okay. To complete that, it's we also have council input and discussion. I'm sorry. Did I hear somebody talking?
She declined to speak.
Terry Gray.
Come on up and speak. You can fill out another one. Apparently, it was misplaced.
That's Cherry Gray.
Terry Gray, 2415 South Texas. I'm here to talk a little bit about the rates that you have because of the size of your meter. For example, if I'm a resident in a 1-inch meter, my base rate's $26.30. But if I'm a business behind that same meter, it's $39.46. When I drive into the service station to get gas in my automobile, and I pull up the pump and it's $2 per gallon, that's a pretty good deal. But that guy behind me is in a commercial truck. He's going to pull up there. He's going to pay $2 a gallon too. So why is it that if I'm a resident, a commercial, I got to pay more because I'm commercial? I've got a number of examples here because I've got 3 business addresses in Pearland. And at my residence last year, for the whole year, I used 110,110 gallons. I paid $1,292 for it. But I have a fourplex at 2403 South Texas that used 65,000 gallons. It had to pay $1,841. So I paid $600 more to use 50,000 gallons less. Hello? I went to Pearland High School. And I graduated in top 50 of my high school class. There's 48 of us. Gentlemen, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense when your rates are so high. If you're a commercial, and they're the same meter, same size meter for a resident, so much cheaper. Something's just not right. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Let's move to council input and discussion part.
Mayor,
Unless staff has a final wrap-up comment. Okay. Go ahead, Councilman.
a lot of good conversation went on tonight. I was glad to sit here and hear this. I'm the only one set up here on council in position 1 several years ago. My wife called me up and said, our water's not working. And so I asked her, I said, well, check with the neighbor. And she checked with the neighbor, and their water was. And that was when Bill Eisen was city manager here. And so I asked Bill, got up and walked over and asked Bill to check it. And he said, well, your water was cut off. And I said, well, can you get somebody out there to turn it on? He said, yeah, but it's got a lock on it. And said, you'll have to pay $75 to cut the lock off. I said, cut the damn thing off. I said, I can't go home. And a wife don't have any water. I mean, that's not going to work. So I know what you're talking about. I think, everybody has has good conversation tonight of everything's going on. One of my concerns are those that's on automatic pay. That seems to me, I don't know, John, it would be a problem on there that, if you're build something, you're on automatic pay and it goes to your credit card, that's going to happen whether you pay more or you pay less or you pay on a late charge or whatever, it's on the credit card. And I don't know, that seemed like a problem for the city to come in here and do reimbursement or check each one of those to do some type of reimbursement to. And like you, Terry, talking about that, I appreciate you doing that on the amount. There's been a lot of conversation on Facebook about what the rate has to do with everything on it. And I know talking to a city manager here that, and a few weeks ago that we sent out, or the city sent out, letters regarding the meter size on a 5/8 and what have you. And I think about 800 letters went out, and it was an opportunity for some citizens to change that meter on there to a smaller one, to do that. And I didn't know if it'd do anything different or not, but when they told me, my base rate for 5/8 was at $65, and if I went to a smaller meter, it was $35, I believe it was. So I had mine changed, and during that time of the time period, the city picked up the cost for changing out, and I don't know, John or Clay, if that's still in the process now that we can do it, and you can speak to that, whatever. But I guess, I don't know how we got to it or anything about it as far as us getting to it. There was big concern and a lot of discussion going on, and I appreciate the staff coming back in and the council and saying, hey, let's sit down and talk about it, bring the people in, let's see where we're at and see what we can do to correct it. I know we have to do that in order to do that, and it's going to be a problem for some people until it all worked out. I mean, it really is, but so that's the big concern that I have on it is coming in, and whether it's option A through C or whatever that's agreed to, and it sounds like B may be the way to go. But and as it looks, we got 37,000 plus meters that we read on a monthly basis in the four areas on there. But the city has spent a lot of money on meters and what have you. So it's time we get it correct, get it right. I mean, there's too many questions out there that have not been answered yet. I don't think it was anything that the city tried to cover up. The staffing did. I think you were just right down to the point that they're trying to find out what it is. I know in some of my concern of it, a lot of people come in, they leave, whether they're in a business or they are pick up and leave and they don't pay the water bill. I know previously we had about $2 million outstanding in water bills that weren't paid, that people picked up and left. And I don't know what that number is right now. So, but as it is, it's, my concern is what plan is. The other thing is that a lot of you I know are your billings coming in, but you're paying it on a credit card, automatic, and what have you. So my concern then is if there's any past due payments, how's that going to be corrected? Or if you're getting billed twice a month, how's that going to be corrected to make some kind of adjustment? That's all I have right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, let me just start off by apologizing to everybody who's in the room, everybody who's not in the room. Certainly not where we want to be. This was clearly a mistake. We made the mistake. We're trying to make amends for the mistake as best we can and try and put everybody back to as close to normalcy as we can. I've had a long conversation with our staff about preemptive to actually this being discussed in council about the situation and what we were going to do. And I would just say, frankly, we had a staff member that had made an error in judgment. It had greater ramifications than we anticipated. As the gentleman said, there should have been more thoughtfulness into a change such as that before we implemented it, and it shouldn't have lasted as long as it did. And I pay a bill every month, and I wish I would have reviewed it and seen it and been able to talk to staff and try and make sure that I was catching this. So there's a possibility I could have caught it, and I apologize that I didn't. So I take responsibility for where we are. So I'd like to be able to try and talk about where we want to go. If we can't not collect the money that is owed, the impact to our ability to run our system would be too harmful. It's not a small value. If we decided to waive the $6 million, then next year we'd have to make up for it some way, somehow, probably by an increased rate, to be able to continue to operate the system as we do. I appreciate that some of y'all don't value the amount of money that we have to spend to be able to operate the water system that we have. I do take great pride in our water system. I do understand that that there are other systems that have cheaper systems, but I'll tell you, their water's not as good as ours. They don't run into as many issues as we do. I deal with other cities on a regular basis. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is there a reason for y'all to complain? Absolutely. But there's not a way that we could just say, look, we made a mistake and we're gonna eat $6 million. It's just there's not a reasonable way for us to do that. So what I want to try and do, and I think where we're close to, is try and find an option to where everybody pays for the consumption for which they've made. We get all caught up as best we can and make it as minimally impactful as is possible. I do know with the new meters that are they're smart meters, we'll have a better control of being able to read these and adjust these in the future, which is why we moved to the system, to be able to get more accurate reads. This is why we paid the money or agreed to appropriate the money years ago to be able to get more accurate reads, to be able to prevent issues like this. I wish we were a few years ahead of that. So what I'd like to try and propose, and maybe if I can get some feedback from you, Clay, or John, whoever's appropriate, I think option B is the best option. It allows us to slowly catch up over time, but I'd like to try and see what we can do to minimize any penalties over that time until everybody's caught up. With respect to penalization for anybody who's late. So if we look at option 2 over between now, March of 2020, into December of 2021, essentially we're moving people's due dates essentially back 10 days over that time period as we try and catch up. At least for those of us in the community that aren't paying close attention to this, that can be cause of confusion. It'll generate a lot of questions. Do we have options, or can we waive options or adopt options to waive any penalties for at least bills that are 30 days late, maybe even up to 60 days late, to kind of compensate for the fact that there's going to be some confusion? People are not going to know when their bill is due if it changes over the time. And frankly, by the amount of people that are in this room, there's probably plenty of people out in the community that aren't paying close attention to this. And we'll still be surprised as we move through this as to what the issues are. So I'd like to see if we can do that, waive any penalties until we get to 2022, or at least have a longer or extended penalty period, or extended period before we enact any penalties to allow people to catch up. Same thing with the cutoffs. And I apologize. I meant to ask this before. I don't know what the exact policy is when we start communicating that a citizen who is deficient in their bills is getting cut off. But again, extend that to allow at least some grace period while we transition, so that if anybody's confused or misunderstood, or they're trying to work through some issues, that we have them a longer grace period until we're through this phase. I think that would be fair. There are a couple of gentlemen that talked about having facilities here, or buildings that don't meet the minimum. I'd like for us to try and see what we can do to adopt a policy for anybody who we can work with that believes that they don't hit the minimum, to take a look at their bill and make sure that they're not getting doubly charged. If there are people who own homes here but are rarely here, maybe don't use that much water, and we have the ability through our system to show that they've consumed less than the minimum 2,000 gallons per month. That we try and work with them to make sure that over the time period we haven't charged them more than what we can fairly believe is the bare minimum. We do believe that bare minimum is 2,000 gallons a month, but if they can show routinely, I'm only using 1,000, I'm only using 1,500. I didn't use anything for a 6-month period. I wasn't even living in the country. Examples like that, I'd like to try and do our best to work with them to make that work. Really get us as close as we can to only charging people for what we can fairly assess they consumed over the time period, over these next few months or transitioning. I know I'm oversimplifying, and I know that by virtue of me saying that, and if that policy is adopted, that's a lot of work for staff. I don't trivialize that, but I do think that, to be fair to our citizens, we owe it to them to put in a little bit of extra effort. I don't believe amortization is the correct answer, but I do There were a few of you who said, I'd just like to be able to pay up right now and be caught up and be done with it. I appreciate software is not always as nimble as we like it to be. I work with a lot of software that I wish could do more, and it just doesn't. Some of the software packages we get, frankly, we buy it in packages. Other cities buy those. We can't get changes like that made as quickly. I trust staff when they tell me it just doesn't have that capability to add that additional amount. If we lack that ability, then could we allow people to pay or to approach our billing department, ask what is owed for their bill in order to get them caught up and find a way to just grant them a credit on their bill each month? So we bill them in the 32 days, but we're granting them a credit. They paid, say, an extra $100 to catch them up to what we believe to be their total consumption up to now. We grant them that credit of $2 or $3 or $5 or $20 each month until again their billing is caught up with their consumption. I think that would be a fair option for those in our community that would really like to just feel like they're not in debt to us. With respect to Mr. Gray, always good to see you. I know that you had some questions about why there's a difference between the residential and commercial, and unfortunately stepped out of the room. But I think since he brought it up, I'll address it. This is something that we adopted within the last few years to try and take a little bit of the burden off of the residents by having the commercial businesses pay a little bit higher rate or pay a little bit higher base fee. We do have, each year, our water costs more. Our staff, we have to increase the salaries for our staff. The cost of materials costs more. The cost for us to take in water from the city of Houston costs more. The cost for us to expand and be more self-sufficient with the surface water treatment costs more. It's going to increase like every other service that we pay for. But what we wanted to do is try and balance it a little bit by asking the commercial businesses, or business owners such as myself to pay more so the residents don't have to pay as much. So it is a bit of inequity for people like me who own a business in town, and others that own a commercial business, have a large meter. If we have a few 10-inch meters, several 8-inch meters, they would pay a higher rate so that y'all don't have to. That's the reason why a commercial business with a 1-inch meter pays slightly more than a resident with a 1-inch meter. For those of you that were curious about that, that's something, to be frank, I initiated because I don't want those amongst us that have a lower income to have to take the full burden of the rate. We're attracting these commercial businesses for that reason, to help them take off some of the burden for the residents, balance the tax rate a little bit. That was one of the policies that I wanted to implement. So if y'all have any questions about why we did that, I'm certainly happy to answer those. And y'all can reach out to me at any time. Again, I know that there's a lot of confusion, and several of you have a lot of reason to be angry. We're going to do our best to try and put it as right and be as fair to you as possible. I wish I could snap my finger and this could all go away, but I don't have that option. Certainly a organization as large as the city of Houston or city of Pearland is. We have more than 800 employees. We're going to have some that make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are going to be more impactful than others. I wish we could bat 1,000, but we just don't. But our policy is to make things right whenever we have the opportunity, whenever we identify an error. So we're going to do our best to do that now. I know me and the other council members, we try and make ourselves available as often as possible. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you see any other errors or you see anything else that doesn't look right, feel free to reach out to us. I think water bills are something we talk about at length each year at budget, and each year or each time somebody reaches out to us and says there's an error. So we'll make ourselves available to you. With that, Mayor, that's all I have for now. Yes, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I want to try to get some questions answered from some of the people that spoke. So Mr. Ms. McCurran had a question on how does she have a gap in her billing when she's paid her bill every single month? So how is she getting a double bill? If you could try to explain that for her.
So the bills went out on a monthly basis. There were no bills that were skipped. It's just that the reading schedule moved ahead and the bill schedule stayed on a monthly basis. So you didn't miss anything. It's just the gap in the time that you were actually billed lengthened over time and the meter reads kept moving forward.
And then also with was it Mr. Sharp, I believe? Yes, you must work at a plant because I agree. We should have an MOC process. It's very unfortunate that this happened, and there should have been some checks and balances. And going forward, I will make sure that we have those checks and balances in place to ensure that we don't have anything happen like this again, not only with the water billing, but anything else. And I do greatly apologize to everybody in the city that has had to deal with this water billing debacle. It's very unfortunate, and I greatly apologize for it, but we are going to get it fixed, and we will put policies in place to make sure that never happens again. And I have some concerns with people that did have auto draft on this, and there was a double payment taken out on their auto draft. Some of these people may have not realized that it was a double payment until after it hit their bank account, and then that's when they started asking questions. But the auto draft, I want to make sure that we're not going to be auto drafting anybody else on a double payment until this is fixed and we're moving forward with our new plan. So I want to make sure that we don't do any more auto draft on a double payment. And I don't know how easy that's going to be, but I want to make sure that we don't have that happen. And then I think that's my comments. So yes, I would be more in favor of option B, so that it's less of an impact to the residents. But I also would like to know with the option B plan, if somebody so inclined to call the water department and say they were willing to go ahead and just pay the full amount and be done with it, do we have a plan to deal with that?
At the current time, the answer is no. We could look at doing that. We can look at doing that as a possibility, but right now, that's not, we'll have to work on being able to do that if somebody wants to do that.
Okay, I'd like for us to do that. Like Mrs. Shakespeare said, she would be willing just to go ahead and pay it and get it done and over with and be done with it. But some people may not be that fortunate to be able to do that. So I'd like to have an option for people that would like to do that to go ahead and do it.
Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess this may be a little bit kind of out of order, but I'll kind of go along, so please bear with me. First off, I guess my feedback is I'm leaning more towards pushing for option C. I think that would allow the clearest visualization of any outstanding amount owed. So that way customers could see, but also knowing if there's an option, kind of a hybrid option of showing the outstanding balance on each statement with options A or B, kind of as the first speaker was talking about. So that way, the residents could see what the actual outstanding amount is. But like I said, C to me would give people the opportunity to pay as they see fit, because we're going to be waiving fees and things for them anyway. If they wanted to stretch it out and they wanted to do a payment plan, I think, that would give them the option. If they want to just go ahead and pay it, I think that would also be the option. So it just seems like the cleanest, easiest version. But I did have a question with options A and B, the timelines associated with those, what would happen if we're in the middle of those and a customer decides to move?
So in that particular case, they would be billed for the entire consumption that they've used, period.
But if, let's say they move, they go out of state or what have you, we're going to forward that bill to their new one? I mean,
No,
or
if they
does the
move
new
out-
customer that sets up their new account get that bill?
They will receive, and this is already happening, people leave the system and they're charged for the entire amount of consumption.
Okay, so it's upon them notifying us to close the account, is that what you're saying?
In that scenario, yes, sir.
So what about in the case of if I were a homeowner renting the premises to somebody else, and then my renters decided to move and the water bill was in my name?
In that scenario, I believe it would just continue on with that owner, and it wouldn't change depending on which option we went with.
Okay.
If I could interject, I believe we have a larger deposit for those situations to help cover if the reality that will happen sometimes, so.
Right, but as the owner, yeah.
Ultimately, I believe.
More pointed out, I as the owner, if it's in my name, would be responsible for these back bills of consumption for my renters.
And that happens already when renters leave. We still have to deal with that.
Yeah, I just think that would be even more confusing and cause even more issues. That's just kind of feedback, I guess, for that. And that's just another thing maybe to consider. I had another question about these catch-up plans. Is there any existing or future, will it impact any bond holders or anything that we have that are basing this on, water charges, revenue streams, things like that?
Ms. Pearson?
No, sir, it would not, because it is not revenue lost. We will collect it, we just collect it in a delayed manner, but we don't lose it, so it would not impact us.
Okay, thank you. And then to a question that was asked about how it was inadvertently billed, if there was a plan in place, how was that extra bill issued? Was that a decision that was made, or was an oversight that something was already in place and the software made that happen, or?
No, so it shouldn't have been done. It occurred. It was an error. It was, we were talking about the plan to catch up. And we were talking about different options. A 21-day billing cycle where we catch people up in 21 days. That was a discussion. We discussed 25 days. We discussed 28 days. And then we were discussing these other options as well. And it appeared from our discussions that we were leaning towards either the 25 or 28 day. The information was already in the system and it was scheduled to go. And instead of going at the standard monthly time period, it was inputted into the system and it was billed. And again, it's for actual consumption that had taken place. Something else, and Ms. Pearson may be able to respond to this as well. It's my understanding those individuals that are set up on auto pay and those that are have also credit card payments. There was a due date for the initial bill that came out in January, and it was due on the 4th of February. And then there was another due date for the second bill that came out, and that due date was in the same month for February 24th. If you had auto pay, it's set up to where it pays on the actual due date, not when the bill comes out, but on the actual due date. Ms. Pearson, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess your point is
that if somebody set up on auto pay, they got billed on when the due date, the initial due date was.
So you're saying that they're notified before their card is charged? Is that what you're
essentially? Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess to the point that Member Moore made, and maybe, I'm on auto pay, so I can speak about my mindset. I pay literally zero attention to the bill. First, I'm set up on the e-bill, so I don't get a paper bill, trying to be environmentally conscious whenever I can. And so I get the email saying that my bill is there, but and correct me if I'm wrong, I have to physically log in to view the bill, correct? It's not just displayed as an attachment in the email. Correct, okay. So I mean, for me to receive that, I say, okay, my bill is due, but I don't actually log in because I kind of, I know roughly how much my water bill is usually going to be, so I just kind of let it hit my card. So to that point, and I had this kind of written down, I don't know how crazy this would be, but I believe that we've gone through a reset of auto pay once previously, right? Like very recently, because we switched systems. Is that correct?
We just had to have credit cards re-entered because we increased the security with the past logins, so that's all that was. So we had to, if you had an auto pay, you had to re-register.
Right. What would the process be, I guess, if it's possible to notify all the customers that are on auto pay just to let them know? I mean, if we had to reset it again, I mean, would that, how difficult of a process was it the first time?
I don't believe it was that difficult of a process, and I believe that we could accomplish that.
Okay. Because, I mean, that would kind of alleviate some of the issues, right, is letting people know, giving them the option, and kind of giving them the heads up that there may be, any additional charges, given the opportunity to review their bills, things like that, and decide if they want to be back on. To the point of Mr. Davis's plan, is there any feedback on just like a standardized monthly read date on 1st, 10th, anything like that?
Ultimately, long-term, and that's what I said. I didn't say specifically related to the various options. I said long-term goal is to get to that, and we can definitely do that once we go. We can do that.
To the new system.
Yes,
with the
that's
towers.
correct.
Okay.
Just to be clear, that was described as the future state. We realize what we're trying to do is the interim state to get to that.
Right,
So
okay.
that was all part of that.
All right. And then you had mentioned the potentially having town halls. Can you maybe, we talked briefly about maybe the frequency of the town halls, but I would kind of like to see if the rest of council decides if we could just add this particular issue as an agenda item moving forward, at least during the timeline of us trying to address this, so we can have some ongoing accountability, have opportunity for residents to give input, council to give input, and provide a little bit more oversight and transparency in the process. If we don't have a frequency for the town halls, I think, again, an alternative would be just to have it as an agenda item on standby to allow public feedback and dialogue and so forth. I think that the plans that you've put forward, once we select one, we'll stick to it. We'll move forward and try to fix everything and get everybody on, up to speed and get their billing reconciled and everything like that. But just to create some checkpoints moving forward. If it's possible, just have it as an agenda item moving forward. And then my last comment, and this is just kind of looking on the two gentlemen that talked about the minimal usage on their bills, the no base rate on the additional bills currently would address that. Am I not correct? Because I mean, it includes up to a certain amount, but that's if they're not using more than 2,000 gallons, there's no charge. Is that correct? Because I mean, the additional bills aren't going to include the other fees. It's just water, correct?
That's correct. It would be for just the gallons of water that would be utilized. It wouldn't include the garbage rate. It wouldn't include, it would just be for the water used.
Right, but, okay. Yeah, so I'm still, so to me, I think that there would not be an impact. Am I correct?
If they were used less than 2,000, they wouldn't be charged for usage because it's in that
Correct, in
overall
the base rate. And there is no base rate in the additional bills, correct?
That's correct.
Right, okay, so that's my understanding is that there would be no impact because the base rate includes the 2,000 gallons already, and the base rate will not be billed on any subsequent makeup bills after the 12th bill is issued. So that's all I have for my feedback, and I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor. Thank you.
Good. Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow, what a mess. I'm not going to sit up here and apologize because I think my words would probably ring pretty hollow. After the explanation for what occurred, how many of you are confused on how this happened? And how many of you confused about the remedy to fix this? Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone here. Well, I have no idea how much you owe at this point. But once we get to full AMI implementation, are we going to be billing on a monthly cycle, regardless of the days, number of days in the month? And if not, why not? If it's all electronic and it's read by a signal and downloaded.
We can do that, yes. Once we get this matter addressed, we can definitely do that.
Okay, so we can't switch to a monthly billing cycle until we have collected all the arrearage.
We can schedule it for whatever read date that we want and whatever bill date that we want. But I don't believe we will be able to do that until we get the arrears accounted for.
If I could remember a little, that part about the cycle, the process, that's where the current system with the drive-bys, you go out and they gather the information, they bring it back, they download it, they send it over to billing, they see that there's meters that weren't there, have to go back out for a second for those that are exceptions. That creates, and so you're right, ultimately, when it's fully implemented, you have the towers, you can do the electronic, that should streamline, collapse all that together. But we're here where we're at today.
And that's the goal. Once we have full AMI implementation and all the past due payments caught up, we will be on a monthly billing cycle.
That's correct. We can achieve that.
Okay. And I guess we're expecting full implementation by later this year.
That's correct.
But we could, depending on which option we choose, under option B, we're looking at 14 months out, or sometime late 2021, which would be more than 14 months, to have everyone current.
Option B is the beginning of roughly early 2022. Option A is the end of 2021.
Okay. So for people, I think this was brought up by Councilman Hernandez and maybe Councilman Perez also, we have the ability, if someone came to us and said, what is my total past due amount? We have the ability to calculate that.
We have the
we have to have it, otherwise we
well,
don't know what these people owe.
We have the reads, and what we haven't done is put some of those reads into the system to bill. So we would have to input all of that information into the system, run it to come up with a total amount that's due based on the, how much consumption they utilized and based on the rates. So it is, again, the issue is that we're delayed in when we're actually billing. So we can, and I'll ask Dan to respond to that, but I believe we can get that information. It's not readily available until we put all the information into the system, all the actual reads. And then when it does that, it's going to calculate a bill and that amount's going to be due. Dan?
But won't you have to have that information before you can start billing for arrearages?
Yes, if we were going to make a decision that we were going to go with option C, yes, we would have to do that.
With option B, you have to know what their arrearage is to start billing, don't you?
Not option C, not option B. All we would do is speed up what we would do is we would slow down the actual reads, and then every 30 days we would bill, and over a extended period of time, we would catch up.
Okay. Okay, I would like to propose that before we disconnect anyone from our water system, that we look at it, cases on a, each situation on a case-by-case basis. We don't want any undue hardship placed on our citizens because of a mistake that we made. Can we make sure that something happens to ensure that
We can do that.
that this isn't caused by a person not being able to pay the arrearage in accordance with the way we've billed them, based on what options we choose?
We can do that. And right now, the issue is cycle 11. That's the only one, and we can definitely do that. If we were to move forward with option A, the 25-day plan, we would implement that as well. No cutoffs.
Okay. Also, I just, I make myself available to any of you that want to contact me. If you have any more questions, I got business cards up here. I'll be glad to give you one. You can contact me by email, text, phone, fax, whatever. Keep in mind, we're all citizens of Pearland. We were impacted by this too, and only recently did some of us find out about this. So it's also a burden to us. I mean, it's not going to provide a lot of comfort to you, but unfortunately, it is what it is, and we're trying to mitigate the impact of it. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Good. Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, clearly we still have a lot of communication to do, and Josh, you get to earn your keep around here. And I mean, I'm in the CPA business, and I've failed if I can't explain some tax code to my client. So I think we've failed until we've communicated exactly what has happened and how we're going to get there to rectify it. And yeah, good luck. A little video, some animation. I don't know what it's going to take, but we've got to clearly communicate where we're at. And it took 2 years to get here, so we need to figure out how we're moving forward, but we don't need a knee-jerk reaction to cause more issues like we had on that cycle 11. Other items, I assume, but can we make sure that we put the slide deck that we saw tonight out on the website? And I've asked for this before in the past, and I know there's issues, but when you deal with pipelines, they reconcile what comes in a pipe, what goes out the pipe, and any shrinkages or losses along the way. And I get, we've got fires to put out, and we don't put meters on those, but we should have some tolerances to say, hey, we've pumped out this much out of a well, we've bought this much from the city of Houston, and we can't account for how many millions of gallons. And just so we can track that and look at the variances over time. I think in terms of options, I think option B makes the most sense. And before we implement option B, I'd like us to put together kind of the different scenarios for somebody that has been under the 2,000 gallons. What does option B look like for them? For somebody that's been maybe on the high side of a residential and commercial, what are the pros and cons of option B? And then maybe grab a few average bills to show this is really what happened. I mean, for 40,000 bills, I know we can't go in to everybody, but we should be able to come up with an average. What is everybody about 2 months behind? Is that would be my guess, but I would think we could do the analytics fairly easy and figure that out. And then at the end of the day, outline all that. Let's present it again in another meeting and answer questions and issues until we've got it figured out, and then roll the plan out. Because like I was saying, it took 2 years to get here. We need to be on top of it, but I don't want to have another knee-jerk reaction trying to fix this and make it worse. And I guess finally, it is frustrating because I've dealt with issues for about the last 2 years on one-off water bill issues I thought were one-off. And so as a trust, I've lost trust with staff
because I know that citizens have lost trust with us, and it's just going to take time to rebuild that. But we've got to start with this issue, and we need to get it more clearly communicated, both what has happened and how we're going to move forward. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Londo.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to wrap this up quickly. First want to say I share all of your frustrations and tremendously apologize that you're sitting here tonight. We all have much better things to do that we'd rather not be having to deal with this. So I tremendously apologize. I think Councilmember Carbone's exactly right. This fundamentally comes down now to just a lapse of trust in a lot of different ways. First, that the lag happened in the first place and wasn't able to be noticed. Then the cutoff notices, of course, are pretty jarring to get when you know that you're paying your bill routinely each month. And then further that this decision to catch up was made without any communication whatsoever. Fundamentally, I think that kind of comes back to, I think this should have been a policy decision like we're having right now, a policy discussion to say, what are the different options? And I just hope that's a lesson learned that we take away from this. But again, extremely frustrating and can't express enough that I'm sorry that you guys have to deal with this. In terms of moving forward, I think that option B is good. I have a couple of questions on that. I like that it avoids double billing in a given month. I think the reason that, like Member Carbone said, this was going on for 2 years and people didn't start noticing until they got 2 bills in the mail in a single month. So that's really what is very jarring. So to avoid doing that again, I think should be a big priority. My question on option B, and so I understand I've been reading this probably more than a lay person, but it's still confusing. So in order to discourage people from using too much water, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but once you go above a certain threshold, then you start paying a higher rate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just in general. And so the issue would be from moving from a 28-day cycle to a 32-day cycle, there would be some percentage of people who are going to get bumped into that higher rate. And so again, talking about the technological constraints, what my proposal would be, assuming that we can do that, would be a modification to option B to where we would waive that higher tier, either in situations where it's a result of this or just in general until we're able to figure it out. If we could waive that higher tier so that we're changing the dates to fix a mistake that we made, can we make sure that nobody is paying any premium for that? Would that be something that's possible?
Good.
We have run some analytics on it, and it really depends on consumption. Based on individuals that have bumped up against that tier, there could be anywhere from 7 to 10% of our total customers that would have the potential to go into that next tier.
So, but would we be able to waive that and mitigate that issue? Mitigate the higher price that they reach upon hitting that tier?
We'd have to look into that more closely before I could definitively say yes or no.
Well, then my next question is kind of contingent on that also, but what I think also might be viable is, 32 is a little bit flexible, right? I'm just thinking, I share the frustrations of some members of the audience that, we're going to continue to deal with this through 2022. Is there any reason that couldn't be lengthened from 32 days to say 34 days and you knock it out in half the time with only a nominal increase?
So we ran that model as well. Obviously, the longer you go on the read cycle, as you aptly described, we'd have to, there are going to be people that are going to be bumped up when you go to a longer read cycle. So we'd have to look at that and estimate what that is. We've done that on the 32-day cycle, haven't done that part of it on the 34.
So of course, I would only want that in the event that that wasn't going to be moving people to be paying that surcharge. So in the event that we could waive that surcharge, but pending public feedback, I think that would be a good step. That would ensure, you're paying one bill a month. We're prioritizing getting caught up a little bit more quickly, and that there's no penalization of, the victims of a mistake by the entity that made the mistake. So I think, of course, pending staff's review, I think that is where I'm at right now. Would like to know if we have agreement from the other members.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could, I got one last question real quick.
Okay.
On the packet that we had, the overview process of the example of schedule on the meter read dates, it shows that the meter read dates are like on Thursday and Friday of every week. Is that correct?
That was prior to changing to the 28 days. In essence, that is when they started the process previously. They would start on a weekly basis. Primarily, they would start, that was somewhat illustration purposes to show you, but yes, somewhat it was done at the end of the week. They do their rereads, and then they would bill within 5 to 10 days afterwards on a monthly basis.
Okay, and we're not doing that now.
No,
Okay.
we moved to every 28-day. For discussion purposes, the process was a 28-day read cycle with the rereads and all of those other exceptions. And then we kept the billing on a monthly basis. So the reads kept going and the billing stayed here.
So if we was to choose option B, what day of the week would that put it, the meter being read at?
Well, we would have to adjust either on the Friday or we would, if it fell on a holiday or if it fell on a weekend day, we'd push it to the following, in most cases, we would push it to the, following day. But if you look at that, that's a good question, because if the 32 days is on a Friday, and then you have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So in that particular case, we probably push it to the previous day.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. It would make more sense if we backed it up to like a Tuesday or Wednesday. Therefore, if you had a holiday or whatever, you would probably end up only with one day extra on a read time versus being a Thursday or Friday.
Agreed. And
or if something happened, it gave more time to go out and read the meter. So that you wouldn't end up being on a Friday and then you got to go out. Well, then you don't get to read all the meters on Friday. Then you come back on Monday. So it just pushes it further. So it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do here. So.
Agreed.
I think that's only if we're adopting something close to a 28-day cycle. The 28-day cycle was you bill essentially the same time every 4 weeks. If we do 32, it's basically the end of the month plus a couple of days.
Well, it still doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I had one more thing that I'd like to add about this process as we move forward, just kind of getting a general idea of what the consensus is with the rest of council. If option B is it sounds like maybe the option that the council wants to move forward with. As part of that, in addition to, as I'd mentioned, if the rest of council again would agree to put this as a standing agenda item moving forward, just to create some touch points. Also wanted to talk about the customer service aspect of this kind of moving forward to make sure that we're equipped to handle all the questions that come in as well. We have received some feedback that maybe our customer service has been suffering. And so I wanted to know if there's an action plan that we could look at putting together to address maybe if we need to add some temporary employees just to handle the additional inquiries, if we need to do some retraining, if we need to deploy a customer satisfaction survey or have that as an option when people call in, just to have some feedback on that as well, because we want to make sure that the experience that we're giving to our customers is top notch. And I think that the feedback has been that maybe we've been suffering in that department for whatever the reason is. I wanted to at least try to create an action plan for the customer service plan that accompanies whatever consensus council comes together with on whatever option we agree on. So again, it seems like option B is at current consensus, but I'll let the rest of council speak on that. But again, if people could provide their feedback on having a monthly standing meeting on the agenda, just to provide that touch point. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
A couple of quick questions. On this higher tier, once you reach a certain consumption level, is that recommended policy by AWWA as far as billing practices?
Yes, I mean, that is common throughout the industry to have tiers based on consumption.
How many tiers are there in Pearland?
What we have is the first tier is the first 2,000 gallons. That's built into the base rate. Then we have 2,001 to 6,000, 6,001 to 15,000, and then 15,001 to 25,000 gallons. Those are the different tiers.
And the same tiers are used for both residential and commercial?
I'll help out here if I can. The base rates are the same for commercial and residential based on the meter size itself. On the volumetric side, as John just went through, we have the 5 tiers for residential volumes. The commercial and multi-units actually operate on just 2 tiers for volumetric use. The 0 to 2,000 gallons, which is covered with the base rate, and then 2,000 gallons plus.
That's on commercial?
Yes, sir.
Well, basically, they're paying at 1 tier rate. There's not
That's
many
correct.
commercial establishments that'll use less than 2,000 gallons. What's the approximately difference between the highest tier and the lowest tier? How much more are we paying for 15,000 gallons per gallon than we are at 2,000?
So it's for the 2,000 to 6,000 gallon volumetric rate, it's $3.94
per thousand.
Sorry, let me get on this year's rates. It's $4.06 per 1,000 gallon, and then the highest rate is the 25,001 plus. So anything 25,000 gallons and one over that, it's $8.14 per 1,000. So it goes from 406 per 1,000 to 814 per 1,000. And council adopted that many years ago as a conservation type rate. So as you use more water, your rates go up with the long-term intention of reducing water consumption.
Thank you, Trent.
Good. You know, one of the things that has occurred to me that why I like option B, I like predictability. And I'm a creature of habit in that for budgeting and the things I do, when you think about water and utilities, what I like if they come in the same day, it does something good for me. I'm predictable. I don't have to worry about paying the bill because I have an arrangement with the city where they bill my bank. They send it to Pearland State Bank and pay my bill for it. So I never miss a payment on water, whether it's over or under. But I use that date when it comes in, and I look at the amount of water that has been used, and I think it's very important that you do that. If that number changes, volume of water changes, I've got a problem somewhere. We've got a leak in the system or something of that type. But I need it's a little heads up and warning for you. And that's why I like that predictability, because it's the same amount of time each month and the same type of water ought to be used each month. Some creature of habit, okay. But as you go through the process, you have to think in terms of what is causing the problem if your numbers change. And I think the biggest thing that option B does, it gives predictability of payment. It also gives you the predictability of amount of water you're using. Maybe the same with electricity or telephone. I use that for the same way. Those numbers change, I better check to see why. And I think as you grow older, you need to remember that things get a little tougher to do as life gets a little more difficult and a little more strenuous. But I find that it's good budgeting because I could use that number. I know what the bank pays every month, and it's the same every month. I know that I can project out in my budgeting 6 months in advance, plug in water, whatever that number is. So it's a very good tool for me Everybody has a different way of keeping track in their budget, but that's a good tool for me to predict what I'm going to pay 6 months from now and what my other costs are, so I know what payments are going to have to be. I have to reach in my bill folder to pay all my bills. So I think item B, option B, helps us out on that. It reduces the billing cycle to 30-day cycles. Every 30 days, ought to get a bill, look at it, change, got a problem, going to fix it. And also, it's I think it does something else. As you get older, you like predictability. I like for the paper to come at the same time in the mornings pretty well. I like my bill to know exactly when that bill is coming due, and if it's not due in such a day that's supposed to. I want to check and see maybe I want to check and see why not, if it lasts too long. So it's, I think it's one, a budgeting tool. It's the one, find out if you got a water problem. It also does something that I think all of us like, and that is we know pretty well what my water is going to be each month. If it changes, we got to fix it. So I think that's the water item. Option B is one of the best plans for me personally. And I think as some of you are getting old, not as old as I am, but you're moving in that direction perhaps. And I think you have the same problem, predictability of payments and things of that type. Okay, Councilman Lloyd, did you have some comments that you wanted to finish on?
No.
Hernandez is going to.
And y'all took care of it.
Okay, he took care of it. Okay, good.
John, just because we had a couple of requests, how much time do you think staff would need to be able to process the various requests of council to be able to give us some feedback before we implement anything? What I'm getting at is how much time do we need to come back and discuss exactly how the exact process?
If it ends up being if we end up going with option B, I think we could very easily have that information to you by the end of this week so that we could discuss it at our next regular meeting.
Okay. So, I think with Member Carbone, as well as I, as a few others discussed, coming up with some options, and various options to address some of the concerns we had before we implement. You think that if you feel like you have clear guidance from us, or if you get clarification that you need, we could be ready next month to take action and tell you which or approve a plan moving forward next week. I'm sorry.
That's correct.
Any other comments from council at this point?
Do y'all feel like you have good clarification, or do you have any other questions?
Well, I just want to, do we have a consensus that you want to move towards option B? If we do, then we can put that information together and we can have that for you by the beginning of next week.
Well, you want to do
No, just if we get a head nod, yes, or a back and forth, no.
Yes. I think the consensus was B with the, I guess the footnote of if it's possible to show people what they're behind. And that might be more difficult, but if you could do that or explain why you can't do it and try not to use trust me in the explanation, I think that would go a long way.
Okay.
We can do that.
Do you need a head count?
We're good, Mayor.
Clear guidance on some of that. John, clear guidance on some of the auxiliary requests that we made?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll be ready next week.
If we do a heads up, I could say all those in favor of item B.
We're good, Mayor.
Huh?
We're good.
You okay with that?
Yes.
All right. I'll make sure that you got the right message. Mr. Harrison, are we, huh? Are there any further comments, Mr. Clay, that you need to make?
No, sir, I think we've covered it, and we'll be back.
Okay, my agenda says the next item is adjournment, which I shall do at 7:30. Thank all of you for being here.